Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to your favorite weekly horoscope. I made it to Denver, and welcome to the new studio. This is where, as you can kind of see, I'm still unpacking boxes here. It's going to look different as time goes on. This is like my first time actually seeing what it looks like in the camera with the lighting and everything. The sun is still rising, so the lighting's probably going to look a little bit messed up, and I'm still figuring out all the details. But anyway, I've got a nice little fireplace here because in Vegas right now, where I just moved from, it's pretty much already summer, but I just got back to Denver, and it pretty much was a blizzard last night, and it's snowing again. So kind of discombobulated from that. Also, some advice I have for people. Never move to a different time zone in the middle of a time change. I am so disoriented right now with my timing and my circadian rhythm. It's insane. So anyway, let's go ahead and start talking about this week. Last week was quite a bit. It just this Mercury and Pisces transit, everything is just everywhere right now. You know, Mercury in Pisces is one thing, right? Mercury being about like plans and communication, the planet of, organizing you usually want doing pretty well. It's in detriment. It's in fall right now, so it has its issues, but it's also with Jupiter, which is expanding all of these, things that Mercury doesn't do well with. So I'm very discombobulated with the Mercury and Pisces transit. But let's start talking about this week. The big thing to really talk about with this week is we have the Mars-Uranus square, which is kind of just a continuation of the Venus-Uranus square and the Saturn-Uranus square. We have Mercury conjoining Neptune today, in case you were hoping for some clarity around situations. You're not going to get it. And then it's really until Sunday when Mercury ingresses into Aries, where that's when things will get a little bit more clear when it comes to things like communication and plans and all that kind of good stuff. So let's go ahead and just jump straight into it. What is this? Hold on. Let's go to Sunday. Let's go to Monday. So big thing on Monday. Sometimes what's hard about recording these horoscopes is I'm recording it, of course, in the past versus in the future. Like, for example, the sun's in Pisces right now versus if I were to record this while the sun was in Aries, my attitude would be completely different. As a fire sign, as a 0-degree Leo, I need that fire energy just completely changes me. But anyway, actually, I should probably do this. Monday. We're starting Monday off. Moon is going to make a square to Mars and Venus. As we talked last week, the moon was going to ingress into Scorpio, and there's that like weird feeling. The moon is going to make a square to Mars and Venus. Then it's going to go opposite Uranus. Then the moon is going to trine Jupiter, and then it's going to trine Mercury. And then by the end of the day, the moon is going to make a square to Saturn and then conjoin the south node. That's quite a lot of lunar transits for one day, to be honest with you. I mean, the moon is Mars, Venus, Jupiter, Mercury, Saturn. It's all the planets. The moon's going to be aspecting all of the planets on Monday. So, kind of prepare for, I think maybe the best way to put it is like an emotionally turbulent day. The moon's in Scorpio. I'm a broken record with this stuff. The moon, our emotions, our internal clocks is a good way to put it. There's this sense of, not having what's going to make us feel comfortable. There's a sense of being very uncomfortable. And the first thing is on Monday, the moon will first square Mars. And it's like moon in Scorpio, Mars in Aquarius, your uncomfortable feelings, squaring that. Well, here's the thing. This Mars, Venus, Saturn, and Aquarius business that we've got going on, this is such a dynamic range of topics to talk about. Like, this isn't just the moon in Scorpio squaring Mars in Aquarius. This is the Mars in Aquarius building up to the Mars-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius. This is a besieged Venus in between the malefics. This is, a Venus about ready to square Saturn. Conjoin Saturn. This is the Saturn-Uranus square. There's kind of a lot to just break down in this little Aquarius thing right now. And I think as the moon, is in a Mars ruled sign and then squares Mars, there is this kind of like, Mars is about fights, conflict, separating, cutting. Mars is in Aquarius where it's very cold, it's very dry. There's this sense of, I don't think your emotions are going to be too heard out all that well. But what's interesting is the moon will pretty much square Mars and then go opposite Uranus. And we're building up for the Mars-Uranus square this week. When we talk about Uranus, we're talking about liberation. We're talking about freedom. Yes, there's a lot of instability. Yes, there's a lot of ups and downs. But like at the end of the day, Uranus challenges authority. Uranus upends the social order and things like that. That's also like a Saturn thing. But the way I look at this is very unhinged energy. Very, very unhinged. Moon in Scorpio, square Mars in Aquarius, then go opposite Uranus. It's like, that's kind of like being like, oh, I don't like moon in Scorpio. Like, I don't feel good. I have these resentments or I'm uncomfortable, and the moon will square Mars in Aquarius, and Mars in Aquarius is like, well, I don't give a fuck. Get back in line. And the moon will go, okay, well, if you're not going to listen to me, I'm going to ruin the party for everybody. That's kind of like what this is. Now, it's hour by hour on Monday. Monday's quite an emotionally turbulent day. The moon will square Mars. This is like first thing in the morning and then go opposite Uranus. So things kind of just immediately pop off in this, like, you know, moon square Mars is going to be this I think this immovability. But as the moon goes opposite Uranus, it's, you know, things don't bend, they snap. I think that's a really good way to look at this. This is snapping energy. The moon will then apply to the square with Venus in Aquarius. And, you know, when you ruin the party for everybody, everyone gets upset. But also Venus in Aquarius is trying to have fun with this group dynamic, trying to have fun with this Aquarius shit, but she's literally being like double teamed by Mars and Saturn, which is not like all fun all the time, if ever. But the moon will square Venus, where there is this, like, it's not even enjoyable. Mars is going to be much more of a frustration and an anger, and Venus is much more of a pleasure. And the moon squaring Venus is like you're trying to receive pleasure, you're trying to enjoy things, but it's not hitting. And I mean, this is like, again, it's an hour by hour day on Monday. It's just lunar transits, but you guys heard me talk about lunar transits. I think they're kind of a bigger deal. But after the moon squares Venus, the moon will then come to this trine with Mercury and Jupiter, where there is a lot of looking at the bigger picture, trying to understand things a little bit more on a grand level, on a more spiritual level. Mercury's in Pisces right now. It's also in between Jupiter and Neptune. So it's not like there's a whole lot of clarity with everything. I think also with Mercury and Pisces, we're not thinking very rationally at this moment right now. And as the moon is in Scorpio, trining Jupiter and Mercury, there is this kind of like, okay, we're emotionally turbulent. We're all over the place. It's trining Jupiter and Pisces and Mercury and Pisces. I think there's a way to uplift yourself, but I also think there's a way to kind of like, I think the challenge is getting yourself like non-emotionally turbulent, but also not like gaslighting yourself into thinking you're always in the right position. Because I think Mercury, I mean, like the moon in Scorpio trining Mercury and Jupiter, it's kind of like when you have a breakup and you go to your friends, and your friends are always going to they should take your side, but your friends should take your side. And regardless if you were the person doing the wrong thing or not, right? That's kind of the thing. I think though with Mercury and Pisces, this moon in Scorpio, you know, make sure you're honest. There is this like level of emotional vulnerability that's there. And I think with Mercury and Pisces, it's easy to contort maybe the story or the narrative because of that emotional, like that emotional vulnerability, that emotional like turbulence, I think is a good way to look at it. I think the challenge later on Monday evening is going to be like being honest with how you feel, trying to see the bigger picture. I've talked a lot about this Pisces stuff and being forgiving, being open, being able to forgive and forget type thing. And I think that's going to be really the challenge once we get later into the afternoon. And I think as we get, you know, once we get to like 1 or 2 o'clock, moon's going to trine Mercury and Jupiter. We're thinking about it. And then once we get later on into the evening, the moon's going to square Saturn and then conjoin the South Node. So again, it's quite a turbulent day on Monday. But as that moon squares Saturn in Aquarius, you know, this is like facing an authority, facing a bigger figure. And like, well, here's the thing. There are consequences to your actions. And on Monday, there's a good chance that you will do something unhinged and you will immediately face the consequences of that. It's instant karma. I literally just dealt with this the other day with my whole moving situation. It's I don't even want to go into that. But the moon in Scorpio squaring Saturn and Aquarius is, even if you think it's wrong, even if you don't want to do it, even if you are uncomfortable, this moon squaring Saturn is facing and addressing this authority. And I don't really know how much leverage you have. I mean, Saturn's in its domicile sign and moon's in fall. This is fallen moon here. I think it's going to be really important to not react. I think it's important to respond during this time. Mercury's in detriment. Moon's going to be in fall. It's going to be really easy to react to things, and those reactions will get you into trouble. But the moon, after it squares Saturn, will conjoin the South Node, where I've talked about this. There is this releasing, there is this purging, there is this letting go of things. You ever realize how hard you've held on to something for so long and then you let go of it and you realize, holy shit, I feel much more calmer, I feel much more relaxed. I didn't realize how tense I was in my body. So I think as that moon square Saturn, there's this like, hey, you know, you fucked up, you did something, face the authority, face the music. And that moon in Scorpio, you're going to have to, there's this level of anger or regression or what's the word I'm looking for? resentment that I think that you're just going to have to move on from, really. That South Node in Scorpio, it's you have to get to the very, very depths of things, right? And I think with Scorpio, it's easy to be in a fixed mindset. And that fixed mindset can be tunnel vision towards things like resentment, things like anger, things like loss, things like death, right? But I think when you get down to the bottom of that Scorpio stuff, I mean, it's all love at the end of the day. This universe is, I mean, here's me kind of getting esoteric woo-woo, but this is all love in the universe and everything is channeled through love. I think as that moon in Scorpio on the South Node, it's kind of like you kind of have to get to that really core layer. Like you have to peel back the layers of the onion and get to that core of like what's important to you, what's true to you. And there's a lot of pain there. But I also think with that moon on the South Node, this is kind of like, it's kind of like when if you've held something in for so long and then you finally get it out and then you realize that once you get it out, it really wasn't that big of a deal and maybe you just needed to express it. So that's Monday. Monday's quite an emotionally turbulent day, even though it's not like big astrology transit day. But that brings us to Tuesday. Tuesday, that's when we're going to have the moon then ingress into Sagittarius while Mars squares Uranus. So as we get into Tuesday, the moon will pretty much be void for a little bit. In Scorpio, a moon void in Scorpio, we're just going to be feeling a little lost, I think. Wait, does Mars... So Mars doesn't square Uranus exactly until the moon ingresses into Sag. It's not going to be until like the middle of the day the moon will enter Sag. Here's the thing. Moon going into Sag, immediately applying to this trine with the sun in Aries. We have not had fire energy for a very, very, very long time. Since like really the last fire energy I could say is that September through November of 2020 when we had the Mars retrograde in Aries, but that was like not good fire energy. It was like frustrating fire energy. We have the sun ingressing into Aries now. We have the moon going into Sag. That fire, like it's starting to pick up. It's starting to get a little warm. And I think there is a lot of spirit, I think. Like the idea of spirit, the idea of that higher calling, that idea of like, okay, like let's get excited about something, everything's starting to grow, spring's starting to get here. There's an excitement, I think, going into Tuesday, but it's Mars square Uranus. Mars in Aquarius squaring Uranus is, well, again, I think what's really difficult is there's a lot of things going on in the world where this is happening. This is really prominent. And I think Mars in Aquarius is a group of rogue people, to be honest. I always think of Mars in Aquarius as like a rogue shooter or like a soldier that's gone AWOL, someone that's gone off the deep end, someone that's been, or like a dishonorable discharge is something I think about. And Mars in Aquarius squaring Uranus and Taurus is like, if the rules, well, it's kind of like, it's reading the comments of my last video. It's absolutely amazing what people's thoughts are about kind of everything right now. But it's, the whole let them drive electric vehicles is the new let them eat cake. And I know a lot of you are very excited to pay more in gas to help Ukrainians, even though it doesn't help them at all. But this Mars in Aquarius squaring Uranus and Taurus is, I would probably say, is going to be upending a lot of things. Like Mars squaring Uranus, it's hard to define what group this is because there's quite a bit of group dynamics going on here. But Mars squaring Uranus, I wouldn't be surprised if this was some like, you have to understand Uranus. And I've talked about this before. Richard Tarnas has a book called Prometheus the Awakener. And it's pretty much a book about Uranus and how Uranus and its mythology doesn't really line up with the planet. Instead, it's much more Prometheus. And the idea is Prometheus pretty much stole the fire from the gods, released the slaves of the people. I don't know if you're into the mythology part of that. But this Mars in Aquarius squaring Uranus and Taurus is very like prison break energy, in my opinion. Kind of like, well, it's one of those things where when you have everything in Aquarius here, and if the rules don't, I guess, like, well, the reason I brought up the whole electric vehicle thing too is there's this Saturn in Aquarius where there's this sense of the authorities are making the rules, and Mars in Aquarius is like, well, if you don't, like, Mars is in Saturn's sign, having to obey Saturn's rules, right? And I feel like Mars, if those rules don't apply to Saturn, then Mars is going to be like, why the fuck should I follow these rules? Like, if you're going to be dishonorably discharged in this is kind of like if you're going to go rogue, you're going to go really rogue. If you're going to go off the beaten path, you're going to really go off the beaten path. And that Mars square Uranus is like, okay, well, if I'm going to get this rejection, if I'm going to be outcasted, then you know what? Fuck it. Let me flip the table over. it's pretty hardcore in my opinion. I think this is really like Mars square Uranus, that anger, that frustration, that fight, that conflict, it's going to pop off. But it's Mars in Aquarius, very group oriented. The collective thought right now is absolutely terrifying. I think we'll also too, we're building up for the Mars Saturn conjunction, which is going to be, when I was doing year ahead horoscopes a while, last year, I was looking at the Mars Saturn conjunction and I didn't know what it was really going to be because I kind of figured we wouldn't go back into lockdowns again. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a lockdown again. I think personally, and this is just my opinion, I might be wrong about it, and I'm wrong about a lot of things. I think the next Mars Saturn conjunction, which will be next week, or I think the week after that. It's the week after that, the beginning of April. I think there's going to be some type of event in Ukraine, whether that's nuclear power. I don't think it'll be a nuclear bomb, either nuclear power or they found out that there's biolabs in Ukraine. And the last time the Mars Saturn conjunction happened, the whole world stopped because of a virus that at that time it was illegal to say it came from a lab. But nowadays, it's pretty evident that it came from a lab. Even people like Fauci, I don't know if you guys know that yet, but definitely came from a lab. Mars and Saturn conjoining. Wouldn't be surprised if there was an event that happened that was like, oh my God, Russia hit one of these biolabs and diseases are out. So lockdown again. There's probably going to be another lockdown, or things are going to come to a very screeching halt at the very minimum. But this Mars square Uranus is the beginning of that. And this Mars square Uranus is like doing something arrogant. I love that word, arrogant. This is like Mars in Aquarius. It's like, you know what? Fuck everything. Let's just fucking pulverize it all. It's very unhinged. I think for people in their personal lives, I think what's really important is to not ruin the party for everybody, right? Because like on Monday, as we saw, if you're emotionally just reactive and you do something stupid, you're going to immediately face the consequences of that. Versus on Tuesday, I think this is when you go, okay, Moon's in Sag, Sun's in Aries. You know what? Fuck it. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm not just like emotional crybaby about it. Mars in square Uranus, though, is like you're still definitely going to go off the beaten path, but not just in this reactive way, but Moon and Sag, much more in this explorative way, much more of I'm going to do this for me way. I mean, the Sun's in Aries right now. We have a lot of charged up energy this week. So, Mars squaring Uranus, I just think the biggest thing is, going on the other side. I mean, guys, this is Aquarius. You're either on one side or the other with a lot of this stuff. Yes, there's a big part of the group dynamic, but I've been really trying to be much more because, I've been thinking about this. The Saturn and Aquarius transit has connected us more via online things, right? Everyone does Zoom now. Everyone like FaceTimes each other. But, there's quite this big disconnect and there's quite this big mental divide when it comes to like everything. And I think, and I've been saying this, I've been pretty consistent with what I've been saying with this Aquarius stuff is that you're either on one side or the other. And a lot of people might think, oh, well, I'm on this side or I'm on this side. And it's not even about this side or that side. It's all about topic. Because while you might think you're on this side on one topic, on another topic, you're the bad guy. You're the outcast. You're the one pushed out. So there's really just no winning. I think when I see both of the bad planets in the sign of group dynamics, I don't think group dynamics are good right now. I also think the war hysteria is so loud right now. It's fucking terrifying. And I think we need de-escalation. But that never happens. Anyway, this Mars square Uranus though is very unhinged, very going off the beaten path. Uranus and Taurus, it's destabilizing everything, but I think it's coming from this either this aggression with the group dynamic or this separating yourself from it, right? Like Venus is in between Mars and Saturn. Venus is like, can we have a good time in the group? And Saturn is like, no, this is my house and what I say goes and you guys are all wrong and I'm the authority. There's nothing you can do about it. And that's also, it's super funny. Saturn just rules authorities, right? And it's just really interesting seeing like, not just like, for example, like Biden's like, oh, I can't do anything about gas prices. And that's that thing, right? But then you like all of the leaders of other nations are very much like doing their own thing. Like they're not listening to anybody but themselves. Like Saudi Arabia pretty much told Joe Biden to fuck off. I mean, Putin clearly doesn't give a fuck about anybody, what anybody has to say about anything. Also, Zelensky doesn't give a fuck about what anybody has to say about anything. And there's this sense of like, Mars, Mars and Saturn being here, like this is Saturn's home sign. Saturn's in control here, and Venus is trying to find the good in it. Venus is trying to enjoy it. I mean, Venus is like the spoils of war, and Mars is like the act of fighting. And I think is, the spoil, like, so how economies used to work was, like, for example, a lot of the Roman economy was pillaging and murdering people and just stealing their goods, right? That's why a lot of Venus rules things like war. But I think as Venus gets closer and closer to Saturn, what was good out of it becomes less and less. And I think this Mars square Uranus, there's this sense of like trying to enjoy the party, trying to enjoy the good things, but it just keeps getting worse and worse. And not that it's all the way bad, but it's just one of those things. If you're like, you kind of just have to accept things, I guess, is a way to look at it. And I think this Mars square Uranus is kind of like, maybe you're trying to have a party and things weren't going according to plan, but you're trying to do things good. And then all of a sudden shit just pops off. And then you just kind of have to let go of control. That moon in Sag, it's like, all right, I'm over this. Moon in Scorpio, trying to control the situation. That didn't work. Moon in Sag, time to just move the fuck on. So then we get to Wednesday, and then the Mercury's going to conjoin Jupiter. Mercury's going to conjoin Neptune. The moon will then sextile Mars and Venus, and then square Jupiter. Not really a whole lot, but let's talk about the moon. Whoops. Wrong button. Let's talk about the moon, or I should say Mercury conjoining Neptune. So 2 things. You guys already know what I'm about to say. Like I feel like I don't even have to say this. You're like, this is if you need to specifically write things in such a specific manner and have attention to detail, this is a horrible day for you. If you have to do something that's very detailed oriented, you are going to fuck things up so bad. But if you don't have to do detailed oriented things, this is a great day to think in terms of abstract. Neptune dissolves, Neptune saturates, Neptune. I think of Neptune again as when you learn about cinema and you learn about cinematography and you learn about shooting, like when it comes to videography, there's regular video and then there's like cinema mode. And then you learn about certain types of lenses and the bokeh. And, Mercury conjoining Neptune is, color grading everything the way. So for example, in the 2010s, there was this, the Transformers movie is a really good version of this. If you remember the Transformers movie with Shia LaBeouf and Megan Fox, the tint, what we'll say the Instagram filter on that movie is like orange and blue. Rewatch that movie and look how orange and blue the tint is on everything. That is color grading, right? And those colors that a lot of the people like, it's like the cinema colors, orange and blue is a really big popular thing in the 2010s, and it's still like a thing now. But I bring this up because those colors evoke a certain feeling, a certain understanding of the situation. And that's what I think a lot of Mercury Neptune is kind of like, in order to understand things, it has to be very environmental, right? Like something I get into, this is mostly me being a Libra moon, is feng shui. Like I'm at the point in my life now where everything has to be feng shui. Otherwise my mind gets all weird. But Mercury conjoining Neptune, I mean, if you're asking for clarity, if you want to know what the fuck's going on, you're not going to know. But if you are open to having an experience where maybe you don't need clarity, maybe it's okay to be confused about things. Maybe it's okay to look at things through an abstract view. Maybe it's okay to be oversaturated with stuff. Maybe it's okay to question stuff. Maybe it's okay to look at things through a different perspective. The one thing I get scared about, and again, I'm going to be making a delineation video about this whole Ukraine thing because it's become very evident to me that a lot of you are not fully aware of the situation. And I'm saying this because if you're not fully aware of this Ukraine situation, the astrology is not going to make sense at all. You're going to be like, well, again, a lot of the mainstream media is like, oh, Ukraine's going to win and beat Russia. It's not happening. It's not going to happen. And I think if you're believing that and you're trying to understand the astrology, when it doesn't work out for Ukraine, you might be really confused. And, maybe I'm wrong too. This is what's fun is, we have this tool to be able to understand the current times about things, right? But anyway, we're going to make a video about that so we can kind of understand it better. But I look at this Mercury Neptune thing and the amount of propaganda that's out right now is terrifying. I mean, like on all spectrums too. I think it's very interesting that people don't think America does, like the Biden administration getting TikTokers to say things. That's legitimately propaganda. That is state-run propaganda. And I look at this Mercury Neptune thing as like probably going to be a lot of propaganda. And it's going to be really hard to, I think, differentiate the details here. And I think that's really important. Well, of course, the details are important, but it's just one of those things where whatever you see on the news with Mercury conjuncting Neptune, just hold on for a second. This Mars retrograde in Gemini that we've got coming up later this year, which is a really big deal. We'll kind of bring up all of this stuff a little bit later. But this Mercury conjuncting Neptune is going to be a very, again, if you have no idea, let's say, what's a good way to put this? If you've never seen a magic trick before, and all of a sudden you see a magic trick, it's going to be pretty fucking mind-blowing. And this is a Mercury conjuncting Neptune. There is something that you were Neptune rules deception, by the way. You know, I talk a lot of shit on Neptune, and I've finally gotten to the point where you guys are on the same page with me on this. Because I fought a lot of you for a long time. People are like, Neptune's great. And I'm like, no, it's not. And then a lot of you are like, yeah, you're right. Neptune actually shit. This is fucking deception at its best. Mercury conjuncting Neptune with Jupiter. This is the story. This is the narrative, and you can't question it. And well, I want you to think of what's going on in your personal lives where everything might just be overwhelmed and all over the place. And I think the best thing is you don't have to really know what's going on. I mean, same thing with like this, I talked about the Ukraine-Russia thing, and I think you guys should know it simply because it's going to make the astrology make more sense. But if like you don't give a fuck about astrology in current times, like Mercury conjuncting Neptune, stop worrying about stuff. Mercury conjuncting Neptune, I think if you're trying to do the Mercury thing and understand it and organize it, you're going to be all over the place. But I think if you are more open to just kind of the experience, letting things kind of fall into place, Mercury in Pisces is very whimsical. There is this magical sense of, getting things kind of figured out, but it's not going to happen through clarity. It's not going to happen through, things being super specific and organized. It's going to happen through accidents. It's going to happen through, weird ways. So anyway, Mercury's going to conjoin Neptune. Wednesday's going to be very confusing. It's also a Mercury day. It's going to be a little bit all over the place. The moon will sextile Mars and Venus, though. That's good. Like, this is like a fun, exciting energy at the minimum. And then the moon on Wednesday evening will start to square Jupiter, where the moon in Sag squaring Jupiter in Pisces is like going, it's just kind of going in circles. I feel like this moon in Sag, if you are trying to escape, like the moon in Sag is really good about like taking your emotions and avoiding them or running away from your emotions. But with the moon in Sag squaring Jupiter, there's no running. There's no running. There's never running. There never really is. So don't run. Let's get to Thursday. Thursday, the moon will still be in Sagittarius and it will square Mercury and Neptune. Then it'll go void for a few hours before it ingresses into Capricorn. Not a big day on Thursday. There we go. Says the moon pretty much squares, Jupiter, Neptune, and Sag, and then it'll square Mercury. I think the hard part with this is the moon in Sag wants to be like, what's next? What's out there? What's the bigger picture? It's very exciting. It's very jovial. And as it squares Jupiter, Neptune, and Mercury, it's like, that there's something to do. That there's this bigger, but like, it's just kind of hard to maybe get the story right. Maybe it's hard. It's easier. It's kind of like when everything in your head makes sense, but then you go to say it and you're like, oh, that doesn't make sense. That's a lot of this. So I think there's a lot of being lost on Thursday. A lot of, not sure where to go, not sure where to be. Yeah, the moon's in Sag, sun's in Aries, so there's that fire energy, but everything's in Aquarius and Pisces. Like, we're kind of fucking lost right now. Kind of everywhere. There's a lot of disorienting things going on. And I truly don't think the disorientation is going to end until Mercury leaves Pisces. So I think as the moon's in Sag, squaring all this stuff, it's just going to be kind of like, you want to make sense of it all and you want to, envision things. But I think, until the details are clear, it's going to be hard to know what the path forward is, really. So I think Thursday is just one of those days to just, keep your hands busy, keep yourself busy, keep yourself preoccupied. This is a great day to reflect on things. This is not a great day to like maybe plan things out and get specific, because I think no matter what, the specificity of your plans will change. Like, it's Mercury conjoining Neptune. You might make plans and you might be like, Cameron, this was a great day to make plans, but then your plans are not going to work out that well. Like, Mercury conjoining Neptune, it might sound good in your head and then you're going to actually do it and be like, why did I fucking do it this way? It was because Mercury was in Pisces conjoining Neptune. That's why. The moon will be void, so there'll be this like weird kind of feeling until the moon enters Capricorn, which I don't know how I feel about this moon in Capricorn transit because it's not really doing anything. You know, you guys know me. I've talked about this moon going in Capricorn. Great time to detach. Great time to just focus on work. But like it kind of squares the sun at first, and it's not really going to be making any aspects to Saturn, Venus, or Mars. It won't make any aspects to Jupiter or Mercury until later on. So as the moon kind of goes into Capricorn, there's just kind of like this melancholy, serious, kind of over it mood, really. Moon's kind of in Capricorn, just kind of detaching from the emotions, doing what we got to do. I think this would be a much better time to start just putting things into motion. Then that takes us to Friday. As the moon goes through Capricorn, it's going to trine Uranus, and then moon trine Mars and Venus. What? That's not right. Sometimes I mess things up. I'm not perfect. So Friday, hold on, let me double check this. I don't know why I put Mars and Venus. The only thing that's happening on Friday is the moon's going to trine Uranus. And who gives a fuck, honestly? The moon in Capricorn. It's okay. This is what's going to happen because everyone gets kind of mad when I like gloss over outer planet. But like, it's a moon trine Uranus. Like, okay, moon in Capricorn. You might be doing some work. You might be doing planet, and then all of a sudden, maybe you find an inventive way to do something different. It's going to be so subtle that you're not even going to notice. I mean, maybe if like the moon is your time lord and like Uranus is like angular for you or something, then like maybe it'll be big. But the moon trine Uranus for most people, it's really going to be nothing. Yeah, and that's really it on Friday. I think Friday is just putting in the hours, put in the work, trining Uranus, kind of like, at least it's a little bit more active. It's not so like moon in Capricorn of like, you just have to shut up and do your work. Like moon in Capricorn, at least trining Uranus is like a little bit more exciting. And that's really Friday. Friday does not have a whole lot to it. But that brings us to Saturday. So on Saturday, moon is going to make a sextile to Jupiter and Mercury as it's at that end part of Capricorn. And then the moon will ingress into Aquarius. So moon trines Uranus, the moon will keep doing its thing. And then by the time we get to Saturday morning, the moon is going to make that sextile to Jupiter, where I think as the moon's in Capricorn, and we're starting to like, when you talk about earth signs, it's earth signs rule tangible physical things. And when the moon's in Capricorn, yes, it's in detriment, but there is this realness to it. There's this tangibility to it. And I think as the moon's in Capricorn, there is this kind of like things kind of becoming concrete, things becoming a lot more physical and, things actually appearing a little bit more in reality. The thing is that moon sextiles Jupiter, the pieces are starting to come together. There is this sense of like, okay, we're at the Jupiter Neptune conjunction. Like, don't get me wrong, guys. I could sit here and say like, there's going to be a bunch of propaganda. I mean, we're lied to by the media like all day long anyway. So, and lied to about most everything. And that's one story. But the other part is this Jupiter Neptune is like, what is your vision? What is your ideal? And what are you doing to create that, right? Where is Pisces at in your chart? And I mean, yes, I could sit here and I talk about the negative energy simply because in the spiritual world, everyone's full of shit. And I think this world right now is very, very intense. And I do focus on the negative a lot, but I think that's for a fucking reason, right? If you want happy, like everyone's going to hold hands and sing Kumbaya, go fucking somewhere else. But also, the world right now is not at this happy, peaceful stage. And I think the astrology validates that. But the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction is there is still something good happening. And I've talked about this a few times. I think a lot of the Jupiter-Neptune is just literally like the mainstream news stuff, guys. Have you seen the interviews? Have you seen the interviews with Jen Psaki? You have Jen Psaki, who I don't like, literally ninjaing every one of these press reporters because these press reporters are like, when are we going to go to war with Ukraine? What if they do biochemical weapons? Are we going to bomb them? Are we going to do this? The mainstream media wants war so bad, and they want it bad enough to completely manipulate you into thinking it's a good idea. And I keep saying, get off the media because this Jupiter-Neptune thing, it's pretty much like all of this Mars-Saturn stuff. There's a lot of badness going on, and really the way out of it is just ignoring it. Not even thinking about it. Just like how we ignore, the 500,000 Iraqi civilians we killed in the Iraq war. We didn't get any sanctions for that. Just like we ignore the, genocide in China going on with the Uyghurs. Just like we ignore the, war in Yemen that we fund to Saudi Arabia. Just ignore it. But Jupiter, Neptune, focus on what's good in your life. Focus on those things. And I look at this moon in Capricorn, sextiling Jupiter, Neptune. as you're putting the pieces together, as you're kind of just detaching from the emotions and just doing the work, you're starting to see that things are starting to become real with this Jupiter Neptune stuff. This is Jupiter. This is the story you tell yourself. This is what's motivating you. This is, the goal. This is the ideal. And Jupiter hitting Neptune is like achieving that ideal, your vision hitting that ideal. And this is really good stuff here. It is the best of times and it is the worst of times. And I think that, this is such a polarizing world on all levels, right? I mean, you could even see that you have people all over the world in abject poverty, and then you have the rich getting absolutely beyond, scalable idea of what wealth is. It's good, it's bad. Things are going to keep splitting. That's just how it is. But anyway, Moon in Capricorn, sextiling Jupiter, Neptune. At least things are starting to come together the way that you want them to in your own life. However, I just think, just get off the fucking news, honestly. And social media too. Like the fucking infographics. But then the moon will make the sextile to Mercury in Pisces before it goes into Aquarius. Like the moon will conjoin Pluto, and that will be a little weird, but it's sextiling Mercury in Pisces, so I don't really care. I feel like that's a little bit more important. But as the moon sextiles Mercury in Pisces, it's happy accidents. Happy accidents happen all the time. Moon in Capricorn, Mercury in Pisces, something, fallen moon or a detrimental moon and a fallen and detriment Mercury. It's kind of like, okay, this is a shitty situation. How can we duct tape this together and just make it work? And I think that's fine. Sometimes, not everything needs to be perfect. We're not perfect as human beings. This reality is not perfect, right? And so I think this moon in Capricorn sextiling Mercury in Pisces is like, while things may not exactly be the way that you want them to, slap some duct tape on it and it'll, for example, I've got like 2 cracks in my windshield. Well, not cracks, they're just chips. And I haven't really replaced my windshield because there's no fucking need to. It's like, yeah, I got 2 chips, but like, who cares? It's not until it's shattered. I really don't need to fix it. So that's kind of like this. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And how long can you get away with something being not super, it's not super bad. Anyway, the moon will go into Aquarius though. That's where everything changes because this weekend, this is this weekend. The moon going into Aquarius, it's going to hit this Mars, Venus, Saturn thing as we get ready for the Venus Saturn conjunction. It's this is going to be an interesting couple days, and this is mostly going into next week. So I guess just kind of like it's going to be like a 3 or 4 day kind of event. But as that moon goes into Aquarius, it is going to feel weird. It's going to feel very detached. This is going to be much more on a world stage kind of on a thing. But I think as the moon goes into Aquarius, while all of this stuff is in Aquarius, dude, there's a reason why Saturn rules this sign. People think it blows my mind. People still think Aquarius is like this kumbaya stuff. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I think there's a truth to that. Like we need social order. Like we're social creatures. But I also think it's the collective and the group dynamic that I think it's terrifying. And I think of Aquarius, the dead of fucking winter. It's not an easy sign. It's not an easy season to deal with. When you have the moon, Mars, Venus, Saturn all here, this is the dynamics of Aquarius are brought up and on all spectrums. So the idea of, Saturn and Aquarius, like, really solidifying our group dynamics and really solidifying that, that mental divide. But then you have Venus in Aquarius. There's a sense of trying to connect with more people and trying to find, your tribe. But there's also Mars in Aquarius. There's this idea of being rogue, being pushed out. Literally Mars, Saturn in Aquarius the last time, March 2020 or April 2020, that was lockdown, social distancing. Mars in Aquarius, Mars conjoining Saturn in Aquarius, social distancing. Best definition ever. That moon in Aquarius, we're starting this whole social distancing thing again. Probably going to be another lockdown, may even be a environmental lockdown, which they made, I don't know. I'm still traumatized that they made it illegal to go outside. Like they literally gated the beaches, which is just, if they do a climate lockdown, and you guys, there's a lot of people like, they'll never do that. They're going to do that. It's kind of terrifying to think that they might make it illegal to go outside. But anyway, we'll know what's going on with that once all this Aquarius stuff starts. But once the moon goes into Aquarius later on Saturday evening, you're definitely going to have that vibe change happen. But that really leads us to what? Sunday, Mercury goes into Aries, and the moon will make a square to Uranus as it conjoins Mars. And I mean, the big thing here is, again, Mercury going into Aries. I mean, it's time to get loud and proud. Mercury in Aries. Be direct. Be clear. Say how you feel. Fucking say it with your chest. I mean, Mercury's been in Pisces where there's been this confusion. There's this sense of being lost. Mercury in Aries knows exactly what the fuck is going on. Mercury in Aries is blunt. Mercury in Aries doesn't give a fuck. Mercury in Aries, there's so many good examples of Mercury in Aries, but like you were going to, I've tried to tell this with people when it comes to like, when it comes to let's say you want to start a business. Let's say you're an artist and you want to put your art out there. Let's say you want to start making YouTube videos. You can do the worst thing ever and people are going to criticize it for you. But let's say you put your all and you put your everything into something and you think it's going to be the thing that's good. You're like, I try to tell this to people will hate you no matter what you do or say or think, even if you're the best person in the world. I mean, like, look at Jesus. If you even think Jesus is real, Jesus was, really looked at as a good person and he was also equally hated. And I bring this up because once Mercury goes into Aries and with this Mars Saturn stuff, there's going to be a lot of anger, everything's going to be in like Aries and Aquarius. It's going to be a lot of identity things being brought up, a lot of individuality things being brought up. And I think as Mercury goes into Aries, there's this sense of clarity. And I think with Mercury being in Aries, I think it's time to, again, say how you feel, be upfront, be clear. I also think too, with this Aries stuff, this isn't necessarily a time for wait for things to fall in your lap. This is much more of a time to act now before it's too late. And I think as we get into Sunday, that moon is going to pretty much be applying to a square with Uranus before it conjoins Mars. And this is following up from that Mars-Uranus square. So Mars squares Uranus, right? Very unhinged, kind of going off the beaten path. And that moon squaring Uranus conjoining Mars is like, I think just I literally think it's a repeat of that. I literally think it's the same thing of like, yeah, moon in Aquarius, you're going to feel out there. You're going to feel distant. It's going to square Uranus. It's going to be unstable. And I think as the moon conjoins Mars, there is this like, fuck everyone mentality. Fuck everything and everyone mentality. I mean, Mercury's in Aries. Again, this is not a fun, these next couple days, by this point, when Venus is getting smashed between Mars and Saturn with the moon here, like there's going to be a lot of resentments and there's going to be a lot of this Aquarian collective is fucked up. Like, the cancel culture shit is not helping or unifying anybody. That's what's so frustrating as an American right now is I didn't vote for anybody, but I was hopeful for Joe Biden. Like I truly was, because I was kind of hoping that, things would kind of, at least resemble normalcy. But this guy's literally like, every leader is like polarizing their people, being like, fuck the other people. It's all the unvaccinated people's fault, or it's all these people's fault, or you're a puppet for Russia. Like what? So this I think it's absolutely pathetic how the leaders are much more interested in dividing you and me between each other versus actually coming together and doing the Aquarius thing where we all come as a collective and, farm our own stuff and, help everybody. They don't want you to do that. They want to divide you because that's Saturn in Aquarius. It's also Saturn squaring Uranus, right? There's a lot of just like, upheaval and a lot of things really, all up and down. In fact, in 1972, it was 1972 or 1976, we had Saturn in Leo and Uranus in Scorpio making a square. And this was the stagflation, the Iranian Revolution. This was also it was the oil crisis too that we had. So there's a lot of repeating themes that we have here. But I look at this pileup of Aquarius stuff and it's just not looking good. I think as Venus is hitting Saturn and Mars is going to hit, I think Venus is like, you know what? Fuck this group dynamic shit. You know what? Fuck this, all of this shit. Like it's a lot of this next 2 weeks is going to come down to saying, fuck all of this shit. And it's also looking like, again, on a world stage, the next Mars Saturn conjunction is going to be really, really wild. And I think as we get into Sunday and this moon conjoins Mars here, the momentum is only increasing. And I think the momentum really builds up here with that moon conjoining Mars. I think by Sunday night, we're on our own. We're feeling very frustrated and maybe angry with maybe even the group that we're assigned. Because oftentimes too, this isn't really a choice. You're kind of assigned groups or you're assigned labels, right? Like, people think I'm like, it's funny reading the comments because people think I'm like ultra conservative. I'm not. I'm very, very left leaning. I'm actually a true leftist because I actually don't believe in war, but now leftists want to be warmongers. So anyway, nothing makes sense anymore. So we're going to have this Aquarius stuff and it's just looking weird. It's going to be a weird beginning of April. And that starts on Sunday night. So let's talk about next week. Next week, Venus is going to conjoin Saturn. That's going to be for, well, if it was just Venus and Saturn, I would like it more. But because Mars is kind of forcing Venus to hit Saturn, I don't like that. Venus, you're supposed to you're supposed to fucking charm Venus into doing things, not force her into doing things, right? And that's Mars is like forcing Venus to conjoin Saturn. There's a lot of pressure there, right? So it's just gonna feel weird. And then we have the new moon in Aries, along with the Mercury cazimi. So I think next week a lot of things get really, really clear. And there's a lot of new beginnings happening, a lot of new starts happening. But I also think that it's just kind of the beginning of what the week after that has, because once we get into the beginning of April, we have like that Mars-Saturn conjunction, then Venus ingresses into Pisces, and we're kind of onto a completely different thing. But final thoughts on this week, guys. I think it is an interesting time to be alive right now. And I think on the world stuff, you're going to see a lot of stuff coming up this week. So I think it's going to be really important to just be mindful of what you're ingesting and taking, and what that Mercury Neptune thing, just watch the movie, but the movie's not exactly reality. So enjoy it, but don't let it confuse you. And I think a lot of this week is, it's just Mars square Uranus stuff, guys. As much as I want to, I think on Monday, if you're angry or upset, don't react to that, but respond to it, because Mars is still going to square Uranus. We're still going to have that moon square Uranus. You're still going to become unhinged. You're still going to be upending social stuff. That's for sure. You're still going to be throwing a wrench in the plans and still be doing things interesting in a weird, interesting way. But just I think the biggest takeaway is don't do it when the moon's in Scorpio, where you are upset and you are angry. Do it like when the moon's either in Capricorn, where it's like you can be detached from your emotions and you can think logically, and you can think. And that's also by that time, Mercury will be in Aries. So I think a lot of this week is just knowing that things are going to pop off and become unhinged. Your plans are going to change. And it's about kind of rolling with those punches and knowing, where you're at kind of emotionally with that. So anyway, that's what I got for you guys this week. I really hope, I really hope you guys liked it, really. Yeah, this is the right thing, right? Sorry, I was just double checking something. Anyway, thank you guys so much for being here. I love and appreciate every single one of you, and I'll be seeing you next week.